listen to the phone call of the criminal in Nigeria socially engineer our call center.
Hello, welcome to pavcast, where we discuss journeys, career pivots, successes, failures, and everything in between. Today, we have a special guest with us, the Chief Cyber and Fraud Officer, Christopher Mascaro. Hello.
Hello, how's it going?
Great. It's great to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this.
I'm really excited too. So, could you tell us more about the company that you work at, Realta, and North as well, the parent company?
Yeah, so right now, I'm currently the Chief Cyber and Fraud Officer of North, which is the largest privately held payments processor in North America. My remit there is focused on cybersecurity, cyber operations, but I also own kind of the risk and fraud operations that you'd find at most payment companies. That's underwriting, fraud, transaction risk, collections. I also have a product group and a strategy group that is, reports to me in North America. I also have the privilege of being the general manager of Realta, which is the Irish subsidiary of North. And Realta is focused on building kind of the next generation of risk management solutions for the payments industry. That encompasses credit risk and onboarding, transaction risk, fraud, and AML, so anti-money laundering. And so that's the company is really data-driven, AI analytics first. And so it's exciting. It's quite a privilege to work with a very talented group of individuals. I think we have 51 total here in Limerick, Ireland. We just hired our first head of sales, who's based in North America. It's week 3. So they're hitting the ground running, and it's an exciting time.
Very exciting indeed. I'm looking forward to seeing how the story unfolds. But speaking about stories, we often talk about journeys here. Could you tell us perhaps your background, because it's a very fascinating trajectory?
Yeah, so I got my undergrad degree at the University of Michigan. I was a quantitative political scientist. I started out as a computer scientist. I got a little bored just doing straight computer science. So I pivoted into the quantitative political science world, which is still heavy on the computer science and development, but it was really applied. So that's where my first exposure to what data science was 25 years ago. So pre 9/11 is kind of where how I look at it. So I did that. When I got out of school, now way over 20 years ago, I started working for the U.S. government. I was an intelligence officer there for about 12 years. And during that course, I had got 2 masters, and then I decided I really like research, I really like data. I wanted to kind of pivot out of government work, and I went and got my PhD. My PhD is in information science, where we'll call it kind of the formal, kind of a more formalized version of applied data science. So understanding how information is used, how it's constructed. There's a lot of different branches of information science, library science, data retrieval, and all that. So what I focused on there was really how you could build different technology to collect data from different sources. So I focused on Twitter back then because I like data. I wanted to really capture a lot of data. And so we built a lot of systems to capture targeted data on Twitter and understand how people engage with each other, form different communities, and just use kind of the socio-technical tools and features of a social media technology that was really in its nascency back then to talk to each other. And so my primary focus back then was political discourse. Again, I like politics. I live in Washington, D.C. most of the time. So it's just natural to understand that. And if you understand how people discuss politics, you understand kind of how people engage day to day, because politics is one of the primary things people talk about.
Yeah, especially on Twitter, right?
Yes.
And politics is one of those things that people can sometimes get extremely passionate about.
Yes.
So I guess it can also serve as a blueprint for how people talk about things that matter to them in general.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of passion there. And that's what we saw. So this was happening during my dissertation was focused on the 2012 election. And so I had about 60 million tweets that I collected and analyzed. And Twitter had only been around for a few years at that point. It's really interesting to think it was maybe 5 or 6 years old, really, and it really only started to take shape for a couple of years at that point. But it was kind of one of the first Twitter elections. And so there's a lot of passion of people when they're engaging on social media about that.
Fantastic. And thank you also for mentioning that data science is not this totally new concept that emerged 10 years ago or 12 years ago, despite what some people would think.
Yeah, so data science, we used to call it big data, right? In the early 2000s or even up till 2010. But it goes back to, and this, like statistical learning and all of that stuff, right? Like machine learning and all this has been around for decades, many decades, even dating back to the mid 1900s, let's be honest. So I think data science, people think, oh, it's new, I want to be a data scientist. There's all these degrees out there, but people have been doing data science forever. It's just been called different things with, I think, most fields. It always evolves.
Yeah, it's more so just a shorthand label, a business label,
It's a
really.
business label, yeah, exactly. It's a way to have to partition people off and have them. It's basically applied engineering or applied computer science or things like that. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So could you tell us a little bit more about your trajectory from there, from being a data scientist or having those data science skills to landing in the financial technology industry and all the way to where you are right now?
Of course, yeah. So when I was in the government, I focused a lot on big data and understanding, how to use big data to solve problems. And there was obviously a security component to that. So my background is really, even though I studied political science, it really was cybersecurity. I got out, went into the government, and started doing a lot of like analytics around cybersecurity and security. So when I went to get my PhD, it was in my last year. I started working at Ernst & Young. They had just rebranded to EY at that point. And I worked in their advanced security center. And I was helping companies build out corporate intelligence programs. And so kind of using what I learned inside of the government, applying it to the private sector, which is really exciting. As a consultant, you get to work with, in the US, some of the largest companies. It was mostly Fortune 250 that I was working with, helping them design programs around intelligence. How do they collect data? How do they analyze it? How do they secure their facilities? All of that. And so I was doing that, and I got a call from an old mentor, and he said, "Hey, I'm at this company who I'd never heard of at that time, and we need someone to help build out some cybersecurity teams, primarily a threat intelligence team." And I did a little research. I was like, "Hey, let's go to the website." I said, "This looks cool." I was living in Manhattan at the time, and they were based in Manhattan. And so I said, "Sure, why not?" So I left EY. I was only there for about a year, and I left and went over to the company called First Data and helped them build out their threat intelligence program, their cyber threat intelligence program, and their SOC, their Security Operations Center. And I'd never been exposed to fraud before. And that's where I really started to learn there's like an applied side to cybersecurity and security. And it was really in the financial services side, and it was fraud. And the thing that excited me about fraud was there's a lot of data, but then there's a lot of money, and you could actually see actions that you take have an impact on the bottom line. And so that really kind of where I started to get really invested in the financial services side. I was doing some financial service work at EY, but I was really primarily focused on helping First Data and all of their thousands of bank partners and millions of merchants, protecting them from fraud.
First Data is a bit of a weird name. It doesn't really say much.
Yeah.
What was the tagline that people use? The biggest company you've never heard of?
Biggest company you never heard of. Yeah, and it was. I mean, First Data, they helped provide functional back-end services to thousands of banks. I think it was 7 million merchants. They did trillions of dollars of processing. They're processing, the back end of the U.S. tax system. If you pay your taxes online, you're doing it through First Data at that point. So a lot of money movement, which is just really absolutely exciting, because whenever you think transactions, we take for granted in the day-to-day world, you tap your card, you dip your card, you type your card details on, you use Apple Pay. There's something behind that. And what's behind that is a lot of ones and zeros that get transmitted. That's just structured data. And as someone who had been around data, collecting data, interpreting data, and also with a passion for security, it was just I want to say it was almost like the perfect role. And it was incredible. And that kind of just started my career to where I am now, 13, 14 years later, now running, cyber and fraud operations for a processor, but also helping build software for, merchants, banks, processors to protect themselves from fraud and financial risk.
Okay, so that was back in Manhattan, but right now, despite the views outside the window, we are definitely not in New York City. We are in Ireland.
Yes.
How did it happen? What's the missing link here?
Yeah, the missing link. I was helping build out the cybersecurity program, the threat intelligence program at First Data, and in the course of that, I started and built a product to address what was basically a daily occurrence of large card breaches at merchants. And so a lot of people may remember Target was breached in late 2013. Tens of millions of cards were stolen. And that kind of helped put card breaches on the map. Credit card breaches have been going on for years, but that was kind of one of the largest that made it into the mainstream media. I think it was like 50 million cards. I don't remember the true number. It's obviously a long time ago. But as a result of that, I was, built out a product that we then called First Sense eventually, that would take all of the data that First Data had access to, so banks and merchants and all that, and we were on the dark web collecting all this data from these card shops where these criminals would post the data. And we found some pretty novel ways to reverse engineer what those cards were. If you apply a little secret sauce, you're then able to say, this batch of cards that this threat actor posted originated from a certain merchant. First Data's market penetration at that, or still to this date, even as they've been acquired by Fiserv, was massive. So we had relationships with many of those merchants. So I was able to call them up and say, hey, you've had a breach. And so we really were able to stop kind of a lot of bad stuff from happening. Again, the breach had happened, but we were able to notify them. They were able to find the exploit or the vulnerability, and then the banks were able to then identify what cards were breached and stop them. So I was doing that, and then
sorry, can we just go back a little bit?
Yeah, of course.
I think for the benefit of the audience, could you explain what those shops are? Is it like Amazon?
Yes, it is kind of like Amazon. So these card shops, and to some extent they still are in existence today. With EMV and all that, it's less so the case. But back in the old swipe your card days, it was easier to steal the data off the card. But these threat actors would exploit merchants, and then they'd put the exploit on whatever, the POS or the back-end system, and they'd collect the card numbers. They'd then post them to these shops that many times you wouldn't really need more than a username and password that you could sign up for to go browse. And so they would basically post the BIN, which is the first 6 of a credit card or payment card. And sometimes they would post the last 4 and then geographic data around it. Because when you want to use a stolen payment card, certain threat actors or certain criminals that buy those payment cards, they get accustomed to using certain ones. So they might know a certain BIN is really useful in a certain area. So they would buy an American Express card from this city and go use it. And they'd know that the fraud controls would be fine. The reason that they would sometimes post that last 4 is because if you were going to do card present fraud, you would potentially have one card that you had printed. And sometimes they just look at the last 4, sometimes they look at the BIN, but the cashier would maybe just look at that last 4, see it on the receipt, and be like, okay. They didn't really care about the first 12 or the first 13. So all of this data was provided somewhat openly. We created all of these crawlers to collect them. And because we had millions and tens of millions of transactions a day, we're able to identify what those card numbers truly were. And then that's where kind of the secret sauce was.
So I'm sorry to our dear audience, you can't replicate this at home without having access to millions of card numbers yourself in the first place.
Yeah.
But I think it's a little bit funny that these guys are expecting some numbers to work better than others.
Yes.
There is obviously some experience behind it as well, but it is almost like you look at the date and it's like, oh, it's my mom's birthday. I think I should get that card from the shop.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was, they had to provide just enough data to make it useful, but you couldn't post the full card number. But these guys, they were, they would post it, and these cards would be bought. I mean, the cards would go for between $10, $20, $30, kind of the general average card. Some of the cards, like a corporate card, an Amex corporate card, could go for $100, $200. And the reason for that is when you get into the corporate card world, certain controls aren't there because corporate card is just usually travel, and you can't have controls on a travel card the same way back then, the same way you would kind of normal cards.
Yeah, I guess you don't want to introduce too much friction in this situation where somebody's traveling for consulting purposes.
Exactly,
for example.
And it's normal. The travel pattern is normal, and most of kind of the controls back then were very kind of structured, deterministic. Outside of a zip code at a certain time, or outside of a city or a state, you would shut it down if there was a weird pattern, especially in the card present world. So yeah, they were. Really smart. I mean, the threat actors that did this, that stole the cards, posted the cards, were really, really, really intelligent, and they got away with it for a long time. Like I said, these shops still do exist today. There are less of them because of EMV. It's harder to steal the cards, and the fraud industry is really caught up with protecting against it. So stolen cards don't have the same value. They still do have some value, but they're not the same as they used to be. Yeah, so, but I think we got to get back to your original question. Why are we in Ireland, right? Yes. So we did this product, and it was, it was great. We identified hundreds of breaches, millions of cards, saved tens of millions of dollars in losses across the industry. We were kind of always like the secret person in the back. We'd let the merchant know. They'd go to the public with their PR crisis team. And then it'd be like, oh, we were notified by someone. And that was us. So it was really kind of cool. And we were, because of the foreign direct investment in Ireland, First Data was looking to start a research facility here, R&D facility. And one of the 3 projects was fraud focused. So how do we build a new fraud system? And because of my product build then, and kind of my expertise in the field, I was the stakeholder that developed the project plan and developed it. So initially, I was just going to be a stakeholder of the fraud project, and the others were kind of more general payments projects, but still pretty interesting. So I was coming over here a lot to meet with the government and all that to help set up the facility. And there was this time where they're like, "You're going to lead the fraud product. Why don't you just lead the whole facility?" And so, we had actually moved back to Washington, D.C. at that point from New York, and I'm a city person. And so I was like, sure, it sounds like a little change of pace. Why not? Why don't we leading a facility in Ireland sounds really fun. It was kind of pretty quick. It happened. I was offered that. The family moved over here soon thereafter. And I was, I went from having an office that was overlooking kind of Midtown Manhattan from across the river, and then having my office in DC be, a few blocks from the White House, to my office in Nina, Ireland, overlooking a farm. So it was really an interesting kind of evolution of, where I found myself. But it was amazing. I was able to meet amazing people. Such as yourself.
Thank you for your kind words. That is where I come into the picture.
So, I met, many people, many of which are key core members of Realta, the current company that we're in the office of right now. It was an amazing experience. We built some really fun, interesting things, continue to evolve kind of the fraud product suite and the payment system. I think we had a second sense, and I think we had a third sense at one point, if I remember correctly. It was just kind of fun. But we had about 10 products that we were working on at any given time. And my time came, and we were acquired by Fiserv, which is one of the largest banking solutions providers in the country and the world. And I was asked to kind of come back to the mothership and kind of do what we did for fraud in the merchant and kind of payment card bank side, for banks, like on the ACH check wire fraud. And so I moved back home, or back to the States, and did that for a little while.
And that is an analogous problem, but it does not sound, it's not really as trivial as it might sound. It is actually a totally different kettle of fish.
It's actually a really hard problem. I mean, payment cards, there's a lot of interesting data at payment cards. I think check fraud is really hard to work with, because the counterfeits are so good these days. Wire fraud is also incredibly hard. Just the level of data and the frequency, right? Payment cards, you as a consumer, you may use your payment card 2, 5, 20 times a day, depending on if you're traveling or what you're doing in the day-to-day. Whereas you probably send a wire every, quarter maybe, or if you're a business, maybe once a week, or every, to pay your monthly bills. I think I've sent less than 10 wires in my life at my age, and they've always been probably around real estate or large transactions. It's really hard to identify that type of fraud there. And so went from, I don't want to say an easy problem, but a data-rich problem, to really a data kind of desert when it came to that. But I had an amazing team that was helping solve the problem. And I think we made some really, really good headway on that. And that brought us kind of right into COVID. I mean, kind of COVID is kind of painted kind of the middle of that. I think COVID happened. I moved back the year before COVID happened, and I just got to the point where I was kind of needed to change a pace. So I kind of stepped away from that for a few months, and found the opportunity at North. And so that's kind of been about a little over 4 years now, and that's where I am today. So yeah.
I would like to go back a little bit, okay, sure, and just talk about the opportunity that you had to embrace this leadership role. I think perhaps many people in the audience would like to know how that comes about. Of course, there is skills that have to back it up, but how do we make those opportunities materialize?
I think the leadership, my first leadership role was in 2008. I led a small team in the U.S. government. And the thing about the U.S. government, the agencies I was part of, some 3-letter agencies, they do an amazing job at training you to be a professional and a leader. I think I was in my first leadership training course when I was in my first year. because there's a certain set of skills that are very important as a leader, and you need to develop them early. And so I never actually thought I never wanted to be a leader. I never grew up saying I wanted to be a leader or whatever. I wanted to be an architect, actually, but I just can't draw, so it didn't really work out that well. So I think the funny thing about where I am today is every time I've had a job or a position or wrote a paper in my PhD, I was always looking for how is this going to help me become a better person, a better professional. And, a lot of that was looking at leaders. There's so many examples of good and bad leaders out there, and you just take it for granted. A Steve Jobs keynote, that's a leadership, a display of leadership that people think it's a product presentation. It's really not. It's him talking about a success outcome of leadership. And I took every opportunity to learn kind of what that was. And I took leadership courses. I think one of the biggest things with leadership is storytelling and public speaking. If you can't speak in public and don't feel comfortable speaking to people, it's really hard to be an effective leader. Because the number one thing I do day to day, and this, we've known each other for a long time, is engage with your individuals that work for you or work with you. Being a leader is not necessarily telling people what to do. It's ensuring that you give them what they need to do their job better. And I think that that's one of the things that's always been fascinating as I've kind of gone up the ranks. And there's people much smarter than me that say this much more eloquently, but like you no longer are doing the job, right? Simon Sinek says, you're no longer doing the job, you're kind of leading the people to do the job. And I think that that's one of the things that it's a pivot, right? You're no longer hands on keyboard. You're more in charge of the people that are doing the job. And that's an awesome responsibility, but it's also, no matter what courses you take, you're never prepared.
I think it's a really nice, a really beautiful thing that you mentioned there, that originally you are the person doing the work with hands on keyboard, and eventually you are still delivering things, you are making them happen. It is still the process of creation. So leadership is not about telling people what to do, but about setting the direction and arriving at our joint goal together.
Arriving at the joint goal. But I think the interesting thing and the best thing any good leader can do is understand what their people want and what makes them happy. I think people want different things, and my goal from when I was a leader to start was to get to know everyone that worked with me, for me, in my organizations or my peers. I try to do one-on-ones with everyone in my organizations at least once a year, no matter what the level. Many times it's multiple times a year. And I always ask 3 questions. It's, how are you? I always want to know how they are. People are honest too. I've had a lot of people say, good, busy, but I also have had people say, I'm really struggling. And so it's always good to, someone that could be honest like that. So that's question 1. Question 2 is, what are you working on? Sometimes, my leaders, who these individuals report into, or their managers and all that, I'll know generally what they're doing, but I do miss the real work. I think that's the thing. When you're a hands-on data person and analysis person, when you get away from that, you really do miss what you used to do. And so I do get kind of a thrill sometimes when I'm talking to someone saying, when they're telling me what they're doing. And so it's exciting. And the third question I always like to ask is, what can I do to help you and what do you need from me? And I think it's important because you really start to learn what's on people's minds. And I've had people ask me for some really small things, and some people tell me, hey, I really want to be a leader. How do I get there? Or I really want this role. What do I do?
For the junior people reporting to you, it's also important that they have that opportunity. And if you do have it, then please make use of it. And if you get to talk to your managers or the skip level managers, please let them know what's on your mind.
Yeah, I think it's, Sometimes it's daunting. It's funny. Sometimes people are like, "Why do I have a one-on-one with him?" And I think you probably felt this way at some point too. But I don't want it to be daunting. Another thing that I'm also like to do is be involved in all the interview processes at a certain point, because I want that relationship to start before they have an offer. I think that's important. I'm involved as a leader. I show up to meetings, I'm on calls. I don't want it to be weird if I'm on a call. I don't want it to feel like the voice from across the room or across the table. I want people to know that I'm there and genuinely care and are interested in what they're doing. And my goal is to solve a problem and kind of, almost scrum master, right? Remove blockers and ensure that everyone has what they need to get their job done.
Amazing. Thank you for your insights. This is very helpful.
Of course.
I'm taking notes here myself.
Okay. Of course.
But beyond people leadership, there is also an element of vision associated with your role. So how did you arrive where you are right now? How did Realta come about?
Realta came about because, when I was in the security world, I just don't like criminals or people that are trying to steal. Let's put it that way, just bluntly, right? People call people fraudsters, right? And we use that term colloquially right now, but in the end, they're criminals. There was an individual who ran fraud in the old organization who used to actually get offended if you called him a fraudster, because he said that kind of trivializes who they are. They're criminals. And so I think where we are today is we all started kind of working on this problem 9 years ago, maybe now, 9 or 10 years ago, trying to introduce the right products into an ecosystem in the payments that was really lacking. I think that there's a lot of companies out there who are trying to do this, like build risk management, fraud, AML solutions, but they're looking at things in silos. And criminals don't act in silos. We have org charts. Criminals don't really have org charts. They'll do whatever you need. And there's really this whole supply chain on the criminal side of, there's a person who gains access to the network. There's a person who has the exploit that collects the data. They then sell the data. There's the webmaster, I'm dating myself with that term, who posts the data. You have the money person. These are companies. The whole ecosystem of fraud, financial crime, these are companies out there. So
extremely efficiently run, agile companies, because they have no red tape, no paperwork to do.
No red tape. And they often operate in parts of the world where there is no rules. Like, they don't have to talk to the legal department to make sure they can do something. They just do it. They're by nature doing something illegal.
Yeah.
So it's a fun world to be in. And I think we all saw this opportunity, and we're given this opportunity to really look at things from the ground up. Let's see what we can do if we start from zero. What platform can we build, and what does the market need? And I think the market needs unification from a product perspective. I shouldn't have to have this point solution and this point solution. I should be able to buy one solution that does it all for fraud and financial crime. And I think that that's what we've done and built here.
So it's really not unlike people using products. Let's say they have a fitness app. They also wanted to do everything. They don't want to go, here for my runs and here for my gym and so on. They want everything together. They want the integrated experience.
It's like if you had Strava Run, Strava Cycle, Strava Rollerblade, you don't want to have all those different things. You want Strava, right? Like, you log in and that's it. So that's what Realta is. Realta is kind of an all-in-one kind of application or suite where you get it from us. It's SaaS, and it's a SaaS product. And depending on where you are in the payments ecosystem, if you're a merchant, if you're an ISO, an ISV, a bank, we can tailor it to you and make sure that you have everything you need there to successfully stop fraud and financial crime.
Without revealing too much about the plans for the coming year or two, where do you see yourself personally going and the team going?
I think, like I said, we just hired a head of sales who's just hit the ground running. It's interesting. I've never managed a salesperson before. So I'm learning a lot from them right now. Just had a call, and I was learning it's always nice to learn in a role, right? Being the smartest person in the room is, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? And so I like learning, and I was just on a call and learned a lot about how to run a sales organization from them. So, I think we are going to continue to expand. I could see us growing both in Ireland also, but in the US, we have to have a commercial team, build out the commercial team, get in front of all of these clients. And I could see myself focusing more and more on that, and, really dedicating a lot of time to thinking of new innovative ways, working with the team to really try to outpace competitors and position the product as well as we can.
Exciting times ahead for the Irish tech community.
Yes, it is. Yeah. No, it's a privilege. I mean, Ireland is such a welcoming community for technology, and they make it worth your while to be here financially. And I think the really exciting thing is the talent. The talent here is amazing. We have 51 people in this office, right outside those doors, and I would hire all of them all again tomorrow, if I could do it over. And it's no coincidence that a significant portion of the people that are here I hired at the last company, and I think that that's really a testament to just the incredible talent that's here, and the dedication to the people and to the mission. So it's been quite a privilege to have, the same faces and names and all that over the years. And it's been cool to see, going back to the leadership conversation, I hired, I have 3 leaders here: a head of engineering, head of data science, or AI and analytics, and a head of product and strategy. I hired them all, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And they were junior data scientists, right? Or manager data science, or, engineering, or, platform architect. And to see them be, a VP of engineering, a VP of product and strategy, VP of analytics, it's really cool. It's like seeing them grow up before your eyes is really exciting. And again, like you, it's been great to see you grow from data scientist to principal and all of that. It's been a fun journey, and I think that's all you could ask for leaders, that your people develop and they execute. And the reality is, there's people that I hired that were really good and really awesome, and they found different things that they wanted to do, and it's really exciting to see them do that. I have people that I'm like, damn, I really wish that we could hire them or bring them back, and they're just happy with where they are. So I think being a leader is kind of balancing the, you want to keep the good people, but also if they have a better opportunity, letting them go.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your kind words.
Of course.
I'm also not part of the homegrown talent.
I know, yes.
I moved here 8 years ago from the city of London, from the Square Mile, and it's been great adventure, really good fun.
You moved for us, right? Or did you?
Yes, I did,
yes,
indeed. The opportunity was too hard to turn down. I did actually turn it down initially, but then I thought about it again, and I don't regret changing my mind.
I remember that.
Great.
Yeah, we were doing some interesting things back then. I was asked to hire, I think it was 20 or 25 data scientists, and you want to talk about a challenge. So we were in the Midwest of Ireland. I told you my office overlooked a farm, and I came from Manhattan and DC and all that. Very cities and very vibrant kind of tech communities there too. And I'm going to hire a couple hundred people, but 20 to 25 data scientists. So we had to go. We had to reach out beyond just Ireland, but it was pretty amazing to see the talent we got. I mean, we had some just absolutely amazing people, of which I think 11 or 10 or 11 of that team are still here today, which is just great. And I really appreciate you following along on the journey. It's been a privilege to have you and know you 8 years now. It seems like both longer and shorter all at the same time.
Thank you so much.
No, it's been fun. I think really as a leader, that's all you can ask for, is have the good people want to come to work. I love my job. I love what I do on a day-to-day basis. It feels like work, but it's fun work. I think the reality is what we're able to do here is really show impact. And when you're helping build tools to help stop fraud and financial crime, you see the impact pretty quickly.
Yeah, I say it a lot that as far as these corporate jobs go, like this is the feel good one. Like you stopped bad guys who are targeting vulnerable people often. It's great to see the impact of that because you are directly stopping a criminal from doing something.
It is. And, I have this dual role right now where I see, we're building the tools here, but I see how they're targeting us kind of in the larger, company. So it's fascinating to really, in some extent, be hands-on, listen to the phone call of the criminal in Nigeria, socially engineer our call center, and be like, how do we solve that? Thinking of really having the data, having the experience to say, okay, this is how we can do that. It's really a privilege to be able to work both sides of it right now, and it's really apply all of our learnings there to what we're doing here.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all your insights. Before we wrap it up, I'd like to ask you the signature question.
Okay.
What are you excited about right now?
I'm really excited about a lot of things. Outside of just kind of what we're doing here at Realta, I'm excited about where the industry is going. I think one of the coolest things that we see with AI is things are moving really, really quickly. And that's on both the kind of offense and defense side. And if you look at it from the sports analogy, right, we're always playing defense. And the criminals have always had an advantage because they didn't have any rules. And I think what I'm starting to see more and more of is technology be purpose-built for the defense. We saw this with just a few weeks ago, Anthropic coming out with Mythos, the cybersecurity model that they're not releasing to the public, but they did create that Project Glasswing or whatever. Yeah, very controversial that they're limiting it, but I think it's really, really the right thing to do for now. And I think didn't OpenAI or ChatGPT release a model recently that was a cybersecurity model that they did release, if I remember correctly, the last couple of days. I'm excited because we're starting to get the right tools in focus. I think people are starting to see more and more of what needs to be done and how it can be done using this new technology. So yeah, I'm excited about the pace. It does keep me up at night. I don't sleep much, but at the same time, and none of us do, I don't think. But it is really fun to see all of the new technology come out to help us and be part of, building that technology, incorporating that technology, and getting to work closely with people like you and your teammates and your team on a daily basis to stop all this and to really hopefully have an impact and put a dent in kind of the bottom line. A good dent.
Thank you. It's really exciting to have these seats in the front row, being able to see what's going on and where it's going. Well, I hope that we will manage to stay one step ahead of the bad guys.
Yes, let's hope so. Well, we will. I think we have the right people. We now have the right platform, and we'll keep coming up with new ideas to do it. And I think that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited to have the platform and the company to where we can do some of this experimentation and be part of that defensive conversation. Like, hey, look what Realta's doing. They're stopping bad guys. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Let's end on this positive note.
All right, let's do it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, it's a privilege. Thanks so much for your time, and it's been fun, a fun journey so far. And let's do another 8 years at least.
Thank you. We'll have you here again in 8 years' time.
Right,
Maybe the venue will be different.
Maybe it'll be bigger. Thanks,
Hopefully.
Pav.
Thank you, Christopher.
All right. Thank you.